So most of us have grown up and heard that there's no I in team. And today I'm going to challenge that idea because there is an I in team. That I in team is all of us. You, me, everybody. Anybody that has influence on the teams that you belong to or the world around us. Influence shapes those teams and it shapes our world. Yet, how often do we consider the responsibility that we have with our influence? We're always caught up in life's daily actions, what we do every single day. But our most profound responsibility as humans happens to be our influence. The power to shape the lives of everybody that you interact with a single smile, a word, or even just your presence. You influence the people in your life. Have you ever thought that before you were born, you were already influencing that moment that your mother and everybody around her learned that you were to be born? You were influencing them, their decisions, their actions. And since then, every day, you've been influencing the people in your life. And most of us tend to think that influencers are people with power or fame. People online, people in leadership roles, politicians, actors, athletes, our bosses, or our parents. However, the truth is, we are all influencers. It's subtle, the influence we have, even invisible, shaping the lives the way that we do, and you never oftentimes even understand the influence that you're having. In 2004, I was living in Colorado, and I was focused on growing my business, and I was away from home and my family all the time. At the time, I was married to my wife, Renee, for 12 years, and we were raising our children, Kristen, Mary, and Henry. And one day, I returned home from a trip, and Renee shared with me a story. And that story was that my son, Henry, had asked the carpet cleaner to play with him because I wasn't there to play with him. And at that moment, when Henry asked that, or when Renee shared that with me, it really hit me hard. It hit me hard to hear that a stranger was taking the place of me giving attention to my son. And it was a turning point for me that realized that I was focused on my business and it was affecting my family in ways that I didn't even know. That carpet cleaner, through his kindness, would ultimately influence a move for my family to Oregon from Colorado. And it would change our lives. So how much influence do you think you have in your daily life? Because influence is like a pebble that hits the water. It sends ripples out, touching everything as those ripples go through. And each ripple changes the surface as it travels. And whatever it comes into contact with, those things change. And in the same way, our words, our actions, spread ripples through the world, shaping the lives of everybody that we touch, often in ways that we never actually fully understand. But not dropping the pebble creates just as much influence. Inaction leaves the water still. But stillness carries its own potential for influence and its own potential for different outcomes. The idea that even a small action, or none at all, has influence over us is often called the butterfly effect. History provides us just amazing examples of the butterfly effect. In 1994, Nelson Mandela, after decades in prison, ran a campaign on unity and forgiveness, not revenge. And that one choice by that one man set the tone for millions But it wasn't just Mandela. Individuals from across South Africa, many voting for the first time, lined up in polls believing in real change. They made individual decisions, some after a lifetime of oppression, but they formed a collective wave of transformation. The 6 months earlier, I was in Southern Oregon, working with a new client at their bowling center. And over many months, I traveled back and forth. And during that time, I developed a really strong relationship, not just with my client, but with their team. And because of that, I found myself sitting around oftentimes and talking with them. And Klamath Falls is a beautiful place. It's surrounded by mountains, high desert. And one time I casually mentioned to my client that raising a family in such an amazing place would be really cool. And just after Henry asked the carpet cleaner to play with him, I got a call from that same client. And that client remembered the comment that I made about raising a family, and they offered us an opportunity to make that a reality. And that simple comment with the carpet cleaner, coupled with that phone call, led to the biggest decision of my family's life. We moved to Klamath Falls and eventually transformed our company from a single consultant company in Denver to a global enterprise that serves thousands of clients worldwide. And that move from a large city to a small town, it brought new challenges. And I carried an urban mentality into a rural community. I didn't anticipate the challenges, the doubts, the struggles, the moments of uncertainty. It tested our confidence, and not just mine, but it tested our families. It tested the confidence we had within each other. We had to relearn being intentional. I had to relearn how my influence was going to affect people in this different place. I had to learn better ways to communicate. I had to learn better ways to win or lose trust. And it wasn't just professionally, it was personally. And understanding our individual influence is only the first step, but using that influence intentionally, positively, and responsibly creates that trust. It also creates possibilities and positive change. So, what happens when we choose to use influence positively? It's easy to notice our influence when we want something. As kids, when we wanted attention, we would say the right words, act out, but we knew how to get our attention. But what about those moments when we're not trying? These are the ones that we overlook, that we actually take for granted. But the larger question then becomes, will we be more positive and responsible more often if we consistently choose to be conscious and positive with our influence? And the answer is yes. And there's research that supports this. Conscious awareness leads to self-regulation, which improves our ability to control our behavior. It also raises emotional intelligence, creates more positive environments. Baumeister involves self-regulation theory, says people who are more aware of their influence can better regulate their behavior. And my own experience aligns with this. My initial behavior was focused on results, doing what my client asked me to do. But I realized empathy, teamwork, and behavior awareness were just as important as the results we were trying to get. And early on, I had an aggressive confrontation with a local business person. And I won. I got the job done. I had the results. But people saw me as an outsider that was focused on business. And while I achieved my goal, I did it at the expense of my reputation. and I didn't like how it made me feel. The outcome of that experience lacked the positive. And Martin Seligman says that pro-social behavior boosts our well-being. So getting that positive feedback instead of that negative result from my actions was a learning opportunity for me. And I learned them the hard way through these mistakes. My direct approach alienated me and, through me, alienated my family, making us feel more isolated. I had to practice my positive social behavior, not just with people, but to better integrate into our community and into the business. And as I began to reflect on the influence and how it was perceived, my behavior actually improved. Judge and Piccolo's transformational and transactional leadership work shows that conscious leaders adopt positive behavior, active listening, empathy, positive influence. And by shifting my influence and being intentional and positive and responsible, both in business and personally, we transformed these companies. 2006, we turned a business around that had lost millions, had high turnover, and had real poor customer service. And all of our decisions created ripples, some of which we didn't see. But when we arrived, what we learned was authority would not fix what the problems were. Trust would. I made that mistake, but I understood that trust was not about my experience or my resume. It was about my individual interactions, my individual influence. Trust is built one issue at a time through honesty, consistency, and transparency. And when you have trust, you feel it. It's tangible. You see it in how people work with you, communicate with you, and commit to shared goals. And trust at its core comes from being mindful. And responsible leadership means considering the ripple effect of every decision and carrying that responsibility with intention. And at the time, I didn't know much about the bowling industry, but I knew how to connect. I learned the roles, focused on understanding their work, their individual situations, help them understand their influence, and not just in the business, but help them understand their influence in the community. And the mindset of the company improved. And the epicenter, our bowling center, became the number 2 earning bowling center in Oregon. And in 2008, we opened our first hotel in that same town. And despite my lack of experience in hospitality, we built a team built on trust, individual respect. And our hotel became one of the top 20 microtel inn and suites by Wyndham in the world. And that's a brand that won 16 consecutive J.D. Power and Associate Awards for customer service. Remember, influence is not always obvious, but it's always present. No matter what it is, kindness, voting in an election, a moment of empathy, every ripple starts with you. What ripple will you carry today? Every day we have a choice. Drop the pebble, create positive, responsible ripples, opportunities, or let them pass us by. Leave the water still. The truth is, we are all influencers. It doesn't take a title. It doesn't take a position. It takes awareness, intention, and action. And imagine the difference, one kind word, a smile, a moment of empathy. These are your ripples. your opportunity to influence in ways that matter. Whether you like it or not, it's real, and it begins with you. So as you leave here today, I challenge you, be intentional, be positive, and be responsible with your influence. Every interaction is an opportunity. Every decision sends a ripple out into the world. What kind will you create? Because when you do, you will improve your life and the life of those around you. You are the I in team. You are the ripple. Now go make waves.